Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. And today we're going to be tackling something that, well, you do every day, but you might not be giving it enough credit, and that is sleep.
Mm.
We're going to be looking specifically at some alarming trends in India, particularly in Hyderabad, highlighted in a piece called The Great Indian Sleep Crisis.
Okay.
Now, get this. A whopping 59% of Indians are clocking in less than 6 hours of uninterrupted sleep a night. So I got to ask you, where do you fall on that spectrum, be honest?
Well, that is a pretty startling figure. And it's not just about feeling a little groggy, We're talking about a genuine health crisis here. Chronic sleep deprivation can impact everything from your mood and your productivity to increasing your risk of serious conditions like heart disease and diabetes. It's not something to take lightly.
Definitely not. And this isn't just some abstract problem either. It's affecting real people in very real ways. The article talks about Kartikai, a data analyst from Hyderabad, who is practically a sleep-deprived zombie. He's missing out on a social life because he's constantly trying to catch up on sleep. His story really seems to echo what's happening in cities all over India right now.
Yeah, it's a trend we're seeing globally. But there are some factors specific to India that are exacerbating the problem.
Okay, so let's unpack that. What is keeping Indians up at night?
Well, the article points to a few culprits. First up, we've got those pesky midnight bathroom trips. 37% of people reported this as a sleep disruptor.
Seriously, that many people. It's like our bladders are sabotaging our sleep.
Yeah, it's pretty common actually. And it's not just about how much you drink before bed. The article suggests that certain dietary habits like spicy foods and late night eating, which are pretty common in India, could actually make those nighttime bathroom visits more frequent.
Wow, that's fascinating. So what I eat could affect how often I wake up to pee. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, it's all connected. And then, of course, there's the ever-present lure of late nights and early mornings. Think streaming services, social media. It's hard to resist staying plugged in, and that accounts for about 31% of sleep disturbances.
Oh, tell me about it. Sometimes it feels like there aren't enough hours in the day to get everything done, let alone get a decent night's sleep. But you know what's really surprising to me is the relatively low percentage of people who blame their phones for their sleep woes. Only 13% pointed to calls and notifications as a major disruptor.
It seems counterintuitive, right? We're constantly bombarded with messages and alerts, but maybe it speaks to a certain level of acceptance. People have just become resigned to the fact that their phones are a part of their lives, even at bedtime.
It's like we've normalized sleep deprivation, which is no scary when you think about it. Because as we've established, this isn't just about feeling tired. There are some pretty serious consequences to not getting enough sleep.
Absolutely. And we'll dive deeper into those consequences in just a bit. But first, it's important to understand the why behind India's sleep crisis.
Okay, so we talked about bathroom trips, late nights, and those pesky phones. But there's also this whole other category of sleep disruptors that accounts for about 15%. What falls under that umbrella?
Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Things like stress, anxiety, noise pollution, even the weather can play a role. But what's interesting is that the article links this category to something very specific to India, a cultural acceptance of sleep deprivation.
You mean it's almost like a badge of honor to be sleep deprived? Like it
Yeah.
shows how hard you're working or how dedicated you are?
Exactly. There's this perception that sleep is a luxury, something you can sacrifice in pursuit of success. But the reality is that kind of thinking is incredibly detrimental to our health and well-being.
Right, it's like running your car on fumes. You might
Yeah.
be able to push it for a while, but eventually something's got to get...
That's a perfect analogy. And that give is what we're going to explore next. Let's talk about what happens when we consistently shortchange ourselves on sleep. So we've established that India, especially places like Hyderabad, is facing a sleep deprivation crisis. But what does that actually look like in everyday life? What are the real-world consequences of running on empty?
Yeah, let's bring this home for our listeners. We're not just talking about feeling a little sleepy, right?
Yeah,
This impacts everything.
exactly. One of the most immediate consequences is decreased productivity. Think about it. If you're constantly tired, you're not going to be as sharp at work. You might find it harder to focus, make decisions, or even just remember things.
Ugh, I know that feeling all too well. Some days it's like my brain is stuck in first gear. But I guess it's not just about work, right? This can affect every aspect of our lives.
Absolutely. It impacts our mood, our relationships, even our ability to enjoy leisure activities. And then there are the more serious long-term consequences.
Like what? The article mentions some pretty scary stuff.
Well, for starters, chronic sleep deprivation has been linked to an increased risk of obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. When you're sleep deprived, your body produces more of the stress hormone cortisol, which can lead to weight gain and insulin resistance. And over time, this can really take a toll on your cardiovascular system.
It's crazy to think that something as simple as sleep can have such a huge impact on our physical health. But what about our mental health? Is there a connection there?
Definitely. Studies have shown a strong link between sleep deprivation and mental health issues like anxiety and depression. When we're sleep deprived, our emotional regulation goes out the window. We're more likely to feel irritable, stressed, and overwhelmed, and this can create a vicious cycle. The more anxious and depressed we feel, the harder it is to sleep, and vice versa.
Smoking a domino effect.
Exactly.
One thing leads to another, and before you know it, you're in a pretty bad place.
And it's not just our own health we need to worry about. Sleep deprivation can have serious consequences for others too. Think about driving while drowsy. It's incredibly dangerous. Your reaction times are slower, your judgment is impaired, and you're much more likely to be involved in an accident.
That's a terrifying thought. It's like driving under the influence, but it's socially acceptable.
It's a huge problem, and one that often gets overlooked. But the good news is there are things we can do to improve our sleep.
Okay, so let's talk solutions. The article mentions something called sleep hygiene. What is that exactly?
Think of it like having good sleep habits, creating the right conditions for a good night's sleep. It's all about making sleep a priority and taking those small steps to ensure you're getting the rest you need.
I like that. It's like setting yourself up for success, but with sleep. So what are some of the key strategies for leveling up our sleep hygiene?
The article outlines 10 golden rules, but we don't need to go through all of them right now. Instead, let's focus on a few that are particularly relevant to the sleep challenges we've been discussing.
Sounds good. Give me the best of the best.
All right, first up is establishing a consistent sleep schedule. This means going to bed and waking up around the same time each day, even on weekends. This helps to regulate your body's natural sleep-wake cycle, which is essential for good quality sleep.
Okay, I'm definitely guilty of throwing my sleep schedule out the window on weekends. But I have noticed that when I do that, I feel way more groggy on Monday morning. Is that because I've messed with my internal clock?
Exactly. Your body thrives on routine, and when you disrupt that routine, it throws everything off balance.
Got it. So consistency is key. What else?
Another important strategy, especially in our digitally driven world, is creating a digital curfew. This means putting away all electronic devices at least an hour before bed.
I knew you were going to say that. But honestly, it's so hard to resist the temptation to scroll through social media or catch up on emails before bed.
I know it's tough. But remember that blue light we talked about earlier? It's a major sleep saboteur. It suppresses the production of melatonin, the hormone that tells your body it's time to sleep.
Right. It's like telling your brain to stay awake.
Exactly. So that digital curfew is crucial. Instead of staring at screens, try doing something relaxing before bed. Read a book, take a warm bath, listen to calming music.
Those are all great suggestions. But what about those nights when you just can't seem to fall asleep? I'm talking about those times when you're tossing and turning, counting sheep and getting increasingly frustrated. Any advice for those moments of sleeplessness?
If you find yourself in that situation, the worst thing you can do is just lie there stressing about it. Instead, get out of bed and do something relaxing until you feel tired again. Avoid anything stimulating like screen time or work. The goal is to create a sense of calm and quiet so your body can relax and prepare for sleep.
That makes sense. Sometimes just breaking that cycle of frustration can be helpful.
It can. And remember, consistency is key. The more you stick to these healthy sleep habits, the more your body will adjust and the better you'll sleep over time.
So it's not about finding some magic cure-all. It's about making small, sustainable changes to our daily habits. It's about shifting our mindset and prioritizing sleep, not treating it as an afterthought.
Precisely. And it's interesting because the article mentions a sleep specialist, Dr. V.V. Ramana Prasad, who emphasizes that 6 to 8 hours of sleep is non-negotiable for most adults.
6 to 8 hours, that seems like a pretty big range. Is there like a magic number within that range, or does it vary from person to person?
It does vary. Some people naturally need more sleep than others. The key is to listen to your body and figure out what works best for you. If you wake up feeling refreshed and energized, you're probably getting enough sleep. If you're constantly hitting the snooze button or feeling sluggish throughout the day, you might need to adjust your sleep schedule.
Makes sense. But what about those times when you know you need more sleep, but life just gets in the way? Work deadlines, family obligations, social events. It can feel impossible to get those recommended hours.
I hear you. We live in a busy world. But here's the thing. We can't keep sacrificing sleep without paying the price. It's like skipping meals. You might feel fine for a while, but eventually your body's going to start sending you signals that something's wrong.
So what can we do? How do we break free from this "I'll sleep when I'm dead" mentality.
It starts with recognizing that sleep is not a weakness. It's not something to be ashamed of or something to squeeze in when we have time. It's essential for our physical and mental health, our productivity, and even our safety.
It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. If we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not going to be able to show up fully in any area of our lives.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual well-being. This is a societal issue too. Sleep deprivation has a huge impact on workplace productivity, safety on the roads, and even our overall healthcare costs.
That's a really good point. When we prioritize sleep, we're not just taking care of ourselves, we're making our communities safer and more productive. It's like a ripple effect.
Precisely. And the more we talk about this openly, the more we can normalize prioritizing sleep and create a culture that values rest and rejuvenation.
I love that. So to wrap things up, let's challenge our listeners to join this sleep revolution. What's one small change you can make tonight to improve your sleep? Maybe it's setting that digital curfew, creating a relaxing bedtime routine, or just making your bedroom a more sleep-friendly oasis.
Yeah.
Even the smallest step can make a big difference in the long run.
Absolutely. It's all about progress, not perfection. And remember, you're not alone in this journey. Share your experiences, your struggles, and your successes in the comments below. Let's create a community of support around this incredibly important topic.
And with that, we'll leave you to ponder those sleep-inducing thoughts. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the great Indian sleep crisis. Remember, prioritize your sleep, take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you on the next episode of The Deep Dive.